I guess moving on, report from the first Selectwoman. Just wanted to, oh, sorry, she's got a live streaming thing I had to do. We had
Is Bruce coming today, by the way? Where's Bruce?
No, he can't make it today. So he let me know on Friday, I think it was, that he wasn't going to be attending.
Yeah. Sorry, I may have missed an email too. So
yeah, that's okay. But he was fine with everything that was on here. So he coordinated with Jacqueline. So this weekend we had a very, I think, robust discussion as part of our strategic plan retreat. About, I think there was about 18 of us, elected leaders, and staff and members of the strategic planning committee who attended a session with our consultant. It was 4 hours on Friday night, 4 hours Saturday morning. And I think it was a really good exercise where we started laying out some of the long-term goals for our community under key areas of focus. And these will be integrated into the strategic plan. I think we really had a great wide-ranging discussion, healthy dialogue, and came up with some really good, I think, tangible things that we can move forward. So the next steps in that process for our board will be an opportunity to actually review a draft of the plan. And you should have gotten an email about using our October morning meeting for that. We're going to block pretty much the whole meeting aside for the strategic plan. We'll do some kind of housekeeping items at the beginning. And then I'd like to do that as a in-person meeting, but we can set up hybrid, obviously. I know particularly Scott, with your work schedule, it might be tough to be here in person. But I think one of the things, and Jen and Al, you were there over the weekend, and I know Scott couldn't because of some health issues, and Bruce had other commitments. But being in person is a really good way, I think, to talk about these things. And I think our facilitator does an amazing job. So she's going to be there in person. So if you can make it in person, I think that would be the preferable route. But obviously I understand, you got to balance a lot. So just wanted to flag that.
What's the date of that, Peggy?
That's our October meeting, which is I want to say the 10th. And so we would have our meeting start at 8, do some quick housekeeping meetings, like for 20 minutes items, and then move into the planning discussion. And so, like I said, I can set it up hybrid if you want to attend that way, because I know you've got a heavy work schedule. So, I just wanted to flag that, but I think we're making a lot of progress on that, and excited to kind of move forward with that process. Any liaison reports today?
Just a comment on that strategic session that you're talking about. I think setting it up hybrid regardless may be good, just so that we can facilitate members of the public joining as well, if possible, just to listen in. Yeah,
we'll definitely have it set up for the public to attend. I was just talking about board members, though. We prefer all of us there in person, but obviously, yes, we will do that. So I don't know if there's been any meetings really since our last meeting. I know it's kind of an odd, we're like shoulder season, leaving for summer.
Things are about to kick
starting
off.
That's the other thing I want to mention is, school's kicked off, a lot going on in town with just things getting ramped up. Any other comments from board members?
No, I just would say I'd like to offer another congratulations to Peter Witowicz, who received his Eagle Court of Honor ceremony this past Saturday. I had the pleasure to attend that, and he a lot of really nice things said about Peter, and he seems like a really great kid. So I congratulate him again on that great honor.
It's a big honor, I have to say. I've got a son who's an Eagle Scout, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So that is pretty cool. So yes, warm congratulations.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, then I guess we'll move on to citizens' comments. Jacqueline, do you want any hands raised?
No hands are raised.
Okay, great. Moving on to item number 6 in the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion, questions? Okay, with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and just a shout out to the donation that the Madison Chamber of Commerce is giving to us that's going to go into the Madison Center project. So we're very grateful for that donation, and we'll be talking more about how we're going to use that as part of the Madison Center project as that project moves forward. Item number 7, discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation of $200,000 into the Fireman's Pension Benefit Fund approved by Board of Finance July 19th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion. This is something that was passed by the Board of Finance. We did $1 million back in May. And I know that some members or former members of the Board of Finance, Fillmore, was very much, this was top of mind for him, and using the opportunity to redeploy fund balance to continue to, we're always going to meet our pension obligations. We budget for it every year. This was just kind of, the more you can get ahead and put more money in up front, that means the future budgets benefit from that. And so the board kind of had a very interesting Dutch auction at the meeting, and they settled on this number of $200,000. So I think it was a reasonable amount to continue. I think we always want to, as we can, chip in every once in a while money into these pension funds, because it helps us, stay ahead of things, and also just reduces budgetary impact sometimes. So any other questions on this?
I think this was something that collectively, I think we all discussed ad nauseum, many meetings, in terms of wanting to put maybe a bit more in the program regardless. So I think this is outstanding. And I applaud the Board of Finance for taking this step as well. I think this is wonderful.
Do we know at what percentage that fund is at now in terms of its funding?
I don't have the data in front of me. This is not going to make a huge difference, to be honest, the 200, but we put $1 million in May. And I think that at the end of this year, what we need to do, because we have to pay pension advisors to run those kinds of numbers. So I think we want to look at, do a holistic look. And that's what the Board of Finance wants to do. They felt comfortable doing 200, but they said, we really need to look at the impacts that these have and what the projections are going to look like and what the funding status is going to be. So at their meeting, and I was there at that meeting, we discussed having at the end of the year kind of a wholesale review again of the pension, all the pension plans, and seeing where we are on a funded basis. But we're still very much in good shape on our pensions. So with that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any no's or abstentions? Great. Okay, motion carries. Okay. Next item on the agenda is an update on grant funded projects, and you'll see later we're going to be talking about some of these in specific details on the agenda, because we need to kind of vote to approve different stages of the application projects. But what I'll do here is share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Sort of. I get the sun in my eyes, but yes.
Okay, I'll do this. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Why is it that? All right, so I just want to give a quick refresher on, where we are on our Madison investment plan. This was something that we rolled out last year. We talked at a number of Board of Selectmen as well as Board of Finance meetings. It was also presented at the town meeting at the beginning of this year. And it was also discussed quite a bit during our budgeting process. The Madison investment plan is basically, we know that because these bonding projects were approved, that we're going to be incurring more debt service into our budgets over the next, 5 to 10 years. We're also coming off some debt service as well. And so our goal was to try to mitigate that impact on future budgets. And so the way to do that was to look at using our surplus fund balance. We also were fortunate that, we got this $5.3 million in funds from ARPA, the American Rescue Plan funds from the federal government. And then we've been very aggressive at going after state and federal grants for different projects. And so we kind of put this plan together so that, for every dollar we spend of taxpayer dollars in our capital plan, we're trying to match it or exceed it with a grant offset. And so that helps us keep going on our capital. The town historically, in order to keep the mill rate down, would cut capital. And that's kind of why we're in the position that we are, that where we have this kind of extensive list of projects that hadn't been completed, maybe in a more optimum time frame. And so our goal is, while we're seeing this debt service kind of come on board and we're working on our major bonding projects, we keep moving forward on our capital projects so that we can make a dent in that CIP list. So, you know, since 2020, we've been awarded about $13 million in grants. And some of those are projects that in CIP we have funding for and we've been saving for. Some of them are newer projects that we'll probably want to use our fund balance to appropriate or match. And we've had lots of discussions, I know at this board in the past and at Board of Finance on a regular basis, talking about the capital projects that will be dipping into the fund balance to match, you know, over the next 6 to 12 months. So examples of what we've already done is we've used $2.5 million of ARPA funds for capital projects. We specifically chose both boards, Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, to try to use that money strategically and to try to get some projects out of the capital plan. And it was also supported by the ARPA committee, the public committee that had been approved. So we've been able to take $2.5 million of capital projects out of our CIP and fund them through ARPA, or at least assist in their funding. Because as we've seen, a lot of these budgets now have been struggling because of the significant inflation and the construction market that we've seen over the last 3 years. The other thing we did, and we approved as part of our budget at the end of the last budget cycle, so really last March, and then it went through the Board of Finance and then voted on at referendum, was putting a large infusion into CIP itself. So we built up the balances. We put $3.5 million. We had a town meeting, I think it was the end of May, for $3.5 million. And that was the same town meeting where we also approved the $1 million into the firefighter pension fund. So, so those were things that we have done already that was part of this Madison investment plan and that we talked through the budget process. The other thing is, if you look at historic budgets, we actually beefed up what we normally put in the budget to contribute to CIP. And we did that the previous year's budget and we did it for this year's budget. And then I think going forward, the idea is we don't have to sustain that levels because we've been doing these infusions. And then we've also been, you know, ticking off all these projects using other funds. So this is just a refresher of what we had, the plan we had started the last year and that we've been kind of following. And that was really one of the reasons that we went for the special appropriation for the school project. Several board members, including Bruce, advocated using the fund balance as much as possible to try to offset some of the budget constraints that we were having with these capital projects. And so the idea is here we have $20 million in the fund balance, and probably it's more than that because we're earning 4 to 5% interest on our fund balance. We are only required or expected to have about 10% as that, you might want to call it rainy day fund or whatever, that would be restricted. And then the Board of Finance determines, well, how much over the 10% do we really need? What's that buffer? I know they've been thinking 12 to 13%, and that range is keeping that buffer. So anything over that is money that we would want to try to use tactically to help budgets. And sometimes we also use that to offset the mill rate, which is what they did this year and the previous year. So just want to talk a little bit about the grants, because I know there's a lot of projects out there, and you'll be voting on some of the applications or acceptance of some of the grants, so we'll be talking about that. This is a summary since about 2020 of grant awards the town has received. And as you can see, it's quite expansive. These are projects that have been kind of sitting in our CIP or really were ideas or discussions. You know, one of the things that we're changing in our planning process is we're not going to just have a 5-year capital plan. We're going to have a 10-year master plan. And we've already done that with the facilities, because the problem is, you know, when you start laying out your projects over the next 5 years, sometimes we can't afford to do them. So they get pushed out. The problem is what was happening is they were getting pushed off the list and then kind of forgotten. So we're going to try to capture 10 years for whether it's infrastructure programs, facilities, and then shuffle things around. So that the other benefit of that is when you have it in your 10-year plan, it's endorsed by the town, and then you can use that to apply for grants that allow you to maybe bring it forward. So maybe something got bumped to year 6, we just don't have the money. It's not as big a priority as another project, but all of a sudden a grant opportunity comes along where that project's a great fit. We can apply for it and then try to pull it forward in the CIP. So this just summarizes, obviously, the biggest ones that are on here. Number one is the $4 million we received from the state of Connecticut last year for Academy. And that $4 million will go to reduce any bonding. So that's not added to the budget. That because of the way our bonding resolutions are, as we learned through the process we went through with the school project, it goes to offset bonding. It does not go additive to the budget. So that was the largest one that we received. We're very excited that the state, they decided to mow right outside my office. So hopefully it's not too loud. The other, then we have some other large infrastructure projects. This one for COPS Warpus roadway improvements. That's actually was going through our COG, where we applied through that process. I sat on the transportation committee and had noticed that for many years, the town had never really gone after this funding that comes through our regional council of government. So we started actively going after some of that money. And so this was one of the projects that we were able to get approved, and we're kind of in the design process. The emergency shelter, we've talked a lot about that. That's the $1 million we received from the federal government. And that one is, we decided at our last meeting that we were going to move forward with an RFP for the design of the whole HVAC electrical system. And that would include incorporating the new generator at Polson. And then obviously the firehouse project, we're going to be talking a little bit more later in this meeting about the status of that. That's going to be something we're going to be focusing on. So it's a lot. It's a lot of some little projects. I got to give our credit to our staff who has been on top of all this stuff. It's a lot for them to manage because you have a lot of responsibility when you accept grants in terms of documentation. Our finance department has been great at this. So, $13.3 million. And this does not include the town aid that we get every year from the state, LoSIP that we get every year from the state. This does not include any of the school construction grant money. So the $6 million that we got in May from the state and above the normal state reimbursement. And then we also get these recurring administrative grants every year. So this does not count ARPA. So this is $13.3 million on top of all that other stuff that we get. And we're just trying to put it to work as much as we can. We also have some in the pipeline that we've applied for. You voted on, I think, the town campus STEEP grant for the town campus gym floor. We applied also for the Scotland Road reconstruction. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I'm going to try to get him to stop.
Yeah,
okay?
You're good. No, it doesn't. Okay. Honestly, we can't hear it.
Okay, because he's like right there. He's like now weed whacking outside my window. The Scotland Road project, that is one that was in CIP, so we would be very excited if we get that grant. That's a state grant, and then we also applied to the federal government for $4 million for Academy. So this is an additional $4 million grant. Through the Department of Agriculture, we qualify as a rural community because we're under 20,000, and they had a grant program for community centers that also with a big focus on health and wellness. And one of the attractive features, I think, of our application was the fact that we have youth and family services, and we offer, mental health services. We will be offering mental health services in the Academy building because we're moving that department into it. So that is unfortunately subject to the whims of the budgeting process, the federal budgeting process. But the positive thing is it was approved by the Senate Appropriations Committee, bipartisan. And so we're in good shape, but we'll just have to see how this I just saw the headlines this morning that they're going to be going through all these spending battles at federal level. So we'll see where we land on that. We also applied for $1 million for the emergency shelter, another $1 million. And then we were encouraged to do that. That is through the State Bonding Commission. Right now, Lamont has not been that busy with these state bonding commissions, but we're well positioned. Our representatives, encouraged us to put an application together for this because of the nature of the project and knowing that this is an expensive project to do this emergency shelter. So even though we already got $1 million from the federal government, it would be great to get another $1 million from the state so that our portion of that will be shrunk down more. So fewer local taxpayer dollars will have to go to that. And then there's just two other. One is the social worker position that if you recall, during last year's budget, we decided to hold off on that and see if we could get it funded through a grant. This is the partnership between the police department and Youth and Family Services. Scott was very excited. He got a notice that it was also approved for the Senate appropriation. So this is just sitting there waiting for the federal budget also.
Oh, that's great.
And then the wastewater facilities plan, if you may recall, the first one that's been done since 1983, I think. We were long overdue. We are expecting to get, it cost roughly $150,000. Half of that will be reimbursed to us through the Clean Water Grant, federal Clean Water Program, I guess. It's a federal money, but it gets administered through the state. So that's kind of, and I'll distribute this out to the board afterwards, just so you have these slides. But I just thought it was important to talk about this because I know we're going to be voting on some more things over the next, really 3 to 6 months on different projects and grants. Some of them will require appropriations, others won't at all. They're just trying to move them forward. But I thought it was helpful to kind of review where we are on this.
I think it's important to paint the full picture too of some of our investments. I think too often we tend to focus on the expense component of it as opposed to maybe the other side of the balance sheet, which this represents in terms of income coming in to help offset the cost. So I think this is really helpful to see. Thank you for doing that.
Great. And I think, and like I said, this doesn't cover the ARPA. and that's going to probably be on an October agenda because we still have about $400,000 left. And then we can give an update on those projects. But you'll be getting an invitation today for the ribbon cutting for the tennis courts at the high school. So
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So, that was ARPA funded. The dog park was ARPA funded. The surf club playground was ARPA funded. So a lot of things that the community can benefit from, outdoor recreation. So excited to see those things happen. I know a lot of times people say, well, whatever happened? And I've had questions about Academy. What's going on with Academy? It's like, well, it takes a long time. It passed referendum. Then we have to appoint a building committee to oversee the project. And then the building committee has to hire a consultant to advise them on the construction project. Then the committee has to hire an architect. Then they have to go through the design process. So it takes time. Unfortunately, they don't happen as quickly as we might want them to, but everything is in motion and really on the timetable that we laid out back in February of 2022 when we talked about the referendum. So things are moving forward, but I'll definitely October will update you on ARPA and where some of those projects are from a status standpoint. So if we want, we can go forward to the next item on the agenda because it kind of follows on one of the grants that was on the list, and that's the one for the Emergency Operations Center Firehouse Grant. And in your packet, and it's funny, for some reason I put a Jacqueline.
You mind to bring it up?
Yeah, do you mind bringing it up? Because I forgot to put that in my slide packet. For some reason this is showing. So this is basically, I wanted to have a conversation about how we want to handle this project. And I know Sam is here as well. So if you want to include Sam as part of the discussion. So we actually met with FEMA at the end of August. They came out and did a site visit, and just to go through, because we're getting $2.5 million for this project, which is incredible. And so they kind of went and looked through, and they have their checklist to go through and document, and they're asking us for a lot of follow-up information. We've also interviewed candidates for the OPM, which is the project management consultants, similar to like what Colliers had been advising us on the school project. We're looking to have somebody advise us on this project. This is a smaller project. I think the total size is around $3.5 million, but because it's, the Madison Hose is a volunteer organization and the town has a lot of stuff going on, we felt it was prudent and we're using federal tax dollars. We thought it was prudent to hire an owner's representative for this. So we're we had interviews, and we're kind of going to come forward at our next board meeting on appointing an OPM for this project. But then we also need to set up, a committee, just like we did for Academy and for the new school building project. And so basically we took the Academy charge, I think, and kind of reflected a little bit with this project. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the composition of the committee. And I think I put in here, I made this like a 5-person committee. Once again, this is a smaller project. It's adding an addition on, but I think it's also going to be high profile. It's in our downtown, right? Very visible. And then also, Madison Hose is a group of volunteers. So I was trying to figure out what would we want in terms of, composition of this. And then I can come back at the next meeting with a final charge for the committee. So Sam, do you have any specific thoughts on composition for this committee? I know we want Madison Hose representation. We want town representation. Certainly Sam's going to be on it. And he wears both hats because he's the emergency management director for the town, this is the EOC. But then he's also a member of Madison Hose. So what are your thoughts, Sam?
So this is kind of unique because it's not really a public building, right? We're going to use run our emergency operations from there when it's a, big disaster or storm. So yeah, I mean, I'd rather have a small committee to keep things moving quickly. If you want to have somebody from the public, that's fine. We're not opposed to that, but there's not going to be any afterwards when it's built. There's not going to be any public use. It's more or less all for town operations and responding to emergencies.
And we are drafting also an MOU that we would have with the firehouse, similar to what we have with the library, because the library, we don't own the library. And yet we obviously have invested a lot in the library and we cover most of their budget. So we're in the process of putting that MOU together, and that's something we'll be coming to this board with also to review, just so we have an understanding of like who's paying for what, who gets access to what, so just as a clear understanding of what our partnership looks like. And we do fund the operations of Madison Hose. And I think historically, though, a lot of the building you funded through their own capital fund, right, Sam?
Yes, historically, the hose company is taking care of the building and the property.
So I don't know if there's any thoughts here.
Sam, what construction is going to be taking place above and beyond the emergency operations center?
It's just going to be the bays to house fire apparatus. The operations center is going to be on the second floor, so the first floor would be just another bay to house more apparatus and actually to spread the apparatus out.
So this building committee that we're possibly going to name here only has authority for part of the project. Is that correct?
I think it's
Yeah.
going to be for the whole project
It's
because
gonna
it's
be for the whole
one
project.
addition. Yeah, it's an addition that's being added. The first floor will be the bigger base, and
Okay.
then the top floor can include the emergency operations center. And I have been asked by members of the public, will there be rooms to, like, can that room be rented out at times? You know, similar to Nomad has a second floor kind of community room that they allow people to rent. So those are the kind of conversations we'll have to have, I think, as we go through this process.
We'll also have a community center 2 steps
Yeah.
away. So, I mean,
Yeah, I
plus the
know.
library.
And I think this is going to be different because it's going to house technology that we're going to be using,
Yeah.
radios, and it's a little bit different, but I know they do want to use it as a training room, and a lot of towns do that. Their EOC is also like a training facility.
Ever be excuse me, would there ever be any reason to include somebody like our town engineer, John, on this building committee? Just, with the recognition of impacts with the downtown center project going on at the same time and other just, engineering type things.
Yeah, we could. It's not.
Yeah. Well, we need to coordinate with the Madison Center project, obviously. I know there's also been a lot of discussion about the median, that had been designed many years ago and how the firehouse would access that. So,
or maybe Rob, then that's Rob.
Yeah.
Rob's been sort of quarterbacking that, right?
So having like somebody from Public Works, having obviously Sam as the EMD on it. Our facilities director, I think probably is a little overloaded. So I don't think the thought was to have him on this project. We probably, do we want to have a board member be a member of this? Do we, I know that Madison Hose would want to probably have 2 representatives on this, correct, Sam?
Yes.
Yeah, so, so if we had
I'm happy to raise my hand and help Samuel on this one if need be.
And then the median actually, when they did it, was already designed for this edition, so they wouldn't have to
Right.
change the median at all.
I think the discussion is more further down, but it does,
The new
and a
median.
lot of people don't understand that we're not going to raise it, with the fire trucks. Okay, so I think, this would be 2 Madison Hose representatives, a Board of Selectmen representative, and then maybe somebody from Public Works. So not have a public member.
Peggy, I was going to suggest that the selectmen be a liaison instead of a
Okay.
member.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
And Sam, at some point, I'm sure the public would like to be reassured that firehouse operations will not be compromised during construction.
Well, it's the good thing is that it's an addition to the building. It shouldn't compromise anything. I mean, I'm sure at times with if they have to bring in a crane or something, we'll have to figure that out. We might have to temporarily relocate apparatus for a little bit, but it's not going to have a huge impact on the operations of the host company.
What about if we consider somebody from the public, but maybe somebody from the chamber? So somebody like a, local business kind of downtown, just somebody that's got, interest in our downtown on the committee?
I think that, I think that, why don't we say that we would have a public member, but instead of doing this, getting 15 applicants things, I know
Yeah.
we could keep it targeted and maybe brainstorm about who that public member could be.
Yeah.
And then we could come back with a recommendation on that.
Yeah.
Does that work? Because I think, I don't think the chamber's a bad idea. Just thinking through about, it's a 5-member board, so But they will certainly be consulted as part of this process. I know already I've gotten some public reaching out concerned about, you don't want a super block of brick, down there.
Yeah,
So there's going to be,
Yeah,
Yeah.
or maybe somebody from economic development. Maybe that's the win.
Yeah.
Then you already have somebody who's sworn in as a public member and they just sort of double hat.
okay, that's not a bad idea. Yeah.
Um,
Okay, well, we'll come back with a proposal for the next meeting then.
Mm.
And then we can probably appoint, I think, at that too, since we're not going to open it up to, application process. Sam, are you good? We'll sit down and talk about it because I know you had some ideas.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so that will come back to you at the next meeting. So then item number 10 is really just following on this. We're actually at a point now where we've gotten all the paperwork done on the grant, most of it done, right? And they're going to be sending us the money in October, correct?
Yeah, so we just submitted the last piece, which is the environmental and historical preservation piece for them to review. The state is going to have the money. I think they're getting the money this month. And then once we get past that, that review of the EHP, then they'll release the money to us.
So we're in good shape on this. So I guess I would then, that's really what item number 10 is. So I guess I'd like to make a motion to discuss and take action to accept a pending FEMA grant to be awarded through the State of Connecticut Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security of $2,471,500 for the Emergency Operations Center project pending Board of Finance approval.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, great. So any other questions on that? And then we will be coming back with an appropriation at one point on this. I think it's around $1 million and this has been kind of on the list for a year now since we found out about this grant, that this was going to be needed to be appropriated for. It's been in CIP for probably, 20 years, Sam? Yeah.
Maybe longer.
Yeah.
It keeps getting kicked down the road.
Yeah. So we're excited. It's moving forward. And I know once we come back and hire at our next meeting, the construction manager or the project manager, that's going to be exciting because then we'll get the design process going and everything. So, so with that, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, great. All right, so that passes. And we'll move on then. You can stay on. So the next one is discuss and take action to accept a pending Department of Energy award of $1 million for the emergency shelter generator project pending Board of Finance approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. So this is the $1 million from the federal government that we were awarded for the generator at Polson. And now that we're kind of moving into the design process, we want to kind of check our boxes and get this approval done so that we can move forward with that whole project. So, which I know we talked a lot about at our last Board of Finance meeting. So any additional questions on that? No? Okay.
Nope.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. So excited to get that thing moving forward. Item number 12, discuss and take action to authorize an application to the State Bond Commission for $1 million for additional funding for the emergency shelter generator project.
Second.
Okay, great. So that was Jen moved. Yep. Okay. And then Al
Yes.
seconded. Yeah, this is just what I mentioned. We were advised to put an application forward that there might be another bond commission meeting, and it's always good to have your projects lined up. And this will help offset an additional $1 million. We haven't been awarded it. I'm just saying we want to at least know that, the application's in, support of the board is there for the additional funding for the project. So this is kind of just to check the box. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. And then Item number 13, this is another one, we just kind of want to get it on record. We've already applied for this. Discuss and take action to authorize an application to the fiscal year 24 community project funding application for $4 million for the Academy Community Center building project.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. So this is the other 4 million that we're trying to get from the federal government. This was all submitted in March or April, but now that we got notification that we're approved by the Appropriations Committee, we thought let's get this approved, acceptance or approval of the application done for housekeeping purposes. But we will probably not know about this if we win this until the end of the year, just whenever the federal budget negotiations happen. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, great. And I just want to point out that if we get this, that means we've basically cut in half the amount of bonding through 2 grants that the town would be doing for Academy. So that's really exciting. And it's exciting that, the state is paid for 25% of it with the $4 million grant we already have, but it would be great to get this additional 4 million. So we're grateful to our federal delegation who have been amazing. Both Senator Murphy and Senator Blumenthal have been fantastic. And Joe Courtney has been great too, ushering this through. Item number 14 is discuss the CDAS Best Practice Award. And I'd like to invite Aaron up for that. So we were notified that we had received this award, and there should have been a printout. And I don't know, Jacqueline, could you put this up on the screen?
Morning.
Yep, hold on.
So
I have
maybe Aaron,
Jacqueline if you need it.
and then I just got a notice, Aaron, about an awards dinner in Glastonbury. So I will reach out to you about that. So this was exciting, Aaron.
That's my hometown. Maybe I'll go.
Oh, okay.
Excellent.
So I thought this was a good lead into our discussion on economic development. Obviously, Sherry had partnered with Aaron on this application process, but I thought, Aaron, if you could just talk about it in a minute and what this award is, that would be great.
Sure. So the town under Dave Anderson's charge as EDC and town planner in 2019 was the first year that CEDAS initiated this best practices program. And the goal of the program basically is to encourage best practices in municipal economic development and land use to spur continuous improvement in your communities. And also to gather this information that can serve as a library to other municipalities for ideas for best practices, policies, examples, things of that nature. So we, with the help of the EDC, Dave Anderson applied in 2019 and the town was certified. It was a 3-year accreditation. However, because of COVID, things got bumped. And so this was our year for renewing our certification. I did make the application. Sherry and I worked on it together back in May. This year, well, actually beginning last year, they have sort of altered the certification process and now have a 3-tiered certification level: gold, silver, and bronze. We did receive the gold certification this year. And as the letter says, there were specific examples that is cited in our application that the board thought was exemplary, good practices, and that's it. So we have a 3-year accreditation, and this is sort of a kind of like the sustainable CT, where you get these certifications, but really the goal is to implement these policies and to continue these policies and hopefully expand on that for better coordination, both departmentally, on a local level with other stakeholders, and then also on a regional level to ease the ability for folks to go through regulatory processes with the land use department, and also for opportunities for economic development.
Well, and I just want to highlight that some of the things that they had considered strength is one is the strategic plan. So I think that's planning is always appreciated. And then the second one on communication, I think this is a hats off to Sam's work and also all the department heads, land use and building, and because we're all trying to share information out on one software platform, which was not necessarily the case in the past. So that people going through the land use process or the building process can kind of understand where things are in the process, and our own staff can see where things are. So that should help with communication. So that was something I know that they've been working on over the last year, and trying to put as much available online as possible. And I know Erin's made a big effort to do that also. So that transparency piece, and then ease of use by the community to get information. And there's still work to be done. They're still working on a lot of different things, but that's one of the objectives, is to move forward in that. And then, obviously the policies and programming, this was what Sherry's job was. She worked with some of these organizations. So obviously without that, somebody in that position, we don't really have somebody to kind of move that forward. But that's kind of what we're going to talk about at our next agenda item. So, but it shows progress, I think. And, I know you're doing a great job working on all the stuff, Erin, and having to kind of carry a little bit of the load now that we're down a person. So
Always down somebody.
yeah, exactly. Like another hat to wear, right? But I think that, any questions for Erin on this particular agenda item? Because we can dig into the next.
Assuming gold is the top award, right? We don't have a platinum above us, right?
did.
Okay, so how many?
We did win the top tier accreditation.
We love that. We love that. So
was
how
nice.
many gold towns are there in Connecticut? Do we know?
I don't know for this year who was awarded. We'll find out in October. But I
Let's
think
assume we're the only one.
there were 3 last year. 3 cities last year. Most were silver in their accreditation, and then there was 1 bronze. So we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be interesting data just to know.
Yeah, it is on the CEDAS website, at least the awards from last year.
Okay.
So yeah,
Cool.
we'll let you know.
All good.
So let me, I'm just going to share my screen, just moving down to the Economic Development Director position, because why is this? Hold on a second. No,
You're good. It's coming in.
it
Got
is.
Yep, we got it.
I didn't have
Now
it.
we don't.
I don't know what that was about. No, oh,
Now we have it. Economic development projects, it says.
okay. Okay, so this just highlights some of the stuff that Sherry was responsible for, and just for the public's benefit. She joined us a little over a year ago, and it was an opportunity. She was working as Sherry was our former economic development director. She was working for the town of Guilford on a part-time basis. And as I kind of talked a lot with Guilford, and I know there'd been some, Ryan Duquesne had been promoting this also over time from the EDC about a shared position. And so, actually this was 2 years ago. And so I had some conversations with the first selectman there, and he spoke to Sherry, and she was very interested in doing this kind of split role, doing economic development for both towns. So part-time with Guilford, part-time with Madison. And so we ended up funding that through American Rescue Plan funds, because this was a new concept for us, to have somebody doing this part-time and also sharing a position with another town like this. And so we've kind of, and we set aside money in ARPA to do this. And I think both towns have used her position in different ways. I would say probably Guilford has been more the traditional kind of role of an economic development director, focusing on, they have a lot more commercial development in their town. So I think her job was a little bit more oriented towards that. Whereas here, I used her for a lot, I would say, more special projects. And so this is kind of a list of the different things that she was involved in, not to mention, as they said in the award, her SBA activities, women Women's Business Development Council, things like that. But she has set up a tourism website that we haven't gone live with yet because we got to figure out who's going to manage it. And she set up a social media page. Was working with Erin on the welcome signs. She also worked closely with the EDC on this business retention and expansion program. We never really had this, which is something that a lot of towns have, for their economic development activities. She did a holiday shopping guide. She kind of shepherded the Light Up Madison project, which is the downtown lights during the holidays. She oversaw that facade improvement grant program, which has really been successful, where people applied for ARPA funds to improve the exterior of their buildings. She was working on some public transit expansion ideas and attending the River Valley Transit meetings on my behalf. She also was a liaison to the Academy Advisory Committee, where a big part of Academy's mission is really economic development, using arts and culture as a driver of visitor traffic to Madison. And so it was a different kind of job. I don't think it'd be appropriate to try to fill that spot right now because we basically have the funding for that position ends July 1. And if Sherry had still been here of next year, and it was grant funded, so it was not in the budget, my intention had been to put her position as a permanent position in the budget, and that budget process would start this November, December timeframe. But I don't think it'd be fair for anybody to go out and hire somebody now and say, we're going to hire you for a part-time position. And then there's no guarantees until next May, whether or not you'll have a job after July 1st, because the budget has to pass. So I think it didn't make sense. And I think also Guilford's taking some time to look at this as well. I think they do still want to have a part-time economic development director. But I think they want to think about it also and use this as a time to reflect on, what role it plays in towns like ours, knowing the size of our town. And I will say this was a big conversation that we had at the strategic plan meeting. And Jen and Al were there, but talking about, we're never going to have like an Amazon Prime warehouse here or a Walmart, right? So we're not going to have those traditional kind of what people often view as economic development. So we need to look at it in a little different way. And that's more about economic vibrancy and supporting the business. We have people like small, shop local. And so that was a big part of our discussion at the strategic plan. So I just wanted to say that my preference would be we use this strategic planning process. And then also I want to consult with the EDC a little bit more. I've already met with the chair to talk about what do we want from this position? Where are the gaps in our town currently? And what should this job look like? And then we can all support it as part of the budget process for this next year. So I don't know, Jen and Al, you were part of the conversations, I know, over the weekend at the retreat, and Erin, you were there. Any thoughts you have?
I think what I learned is the word development means a lot of different things to different people. And I think until we articulate and codify our strategic plan, I'm not sure we're ready to focus on just what it is we want to develop. That was my takeaway. How about you, Jen?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that point, Al. And Peggy, I agree with your point as well, just about the nature of the budgeting process and the challenges that would present somebody for accepting a role like this. So I think I agree, holding off on it until we get a little bit more solid in our footing sounds like the best idea.
Okay. And I think that, because I wanted people to understand that we value everything she was doing. And I think she was unique because she was doing some things that maybe were outside of that traditional scope. So we're trying to identify internally right now to give us over the hump about how some of this stuff can keep moving forward. And without all dumping it all on Aaron. So we're not going to dump it all on you. But I think, it's better to take our time and do it right and have it fully funded in the budget, whether it's part-time, full-time, or maybe this is a different kind of job altogether that when we look at this, and we'll come forward with that, I think, over the next couple of months. And I'm going to try to get input from a lot of different, including Aaron's department, EDC, the chamber. I'm meeting with the chamber next week to talk a little bit more about this, so we can have kind of a cohesive recommendations. And then obviously the strategic plan too, which we'll be focusing on a lot in the next 2 months. So stay tuned, I guess is the message. And we'll kind of come back as part of the budget process with what we think is the right move forward. So with that, I guess I could pass it off to Erin. I thought it would be helpful just to get an update. I think she was here 4 or 5 months ago, right? Just talking about different initiatives in town that have been happening, and then also the plan of conservation development. If she could just provide us an update on some of those things.
Sure. So I think the last time I was before you was in March to give you an update on commission actions, things of that nature, things that were happening throughout the land use department. So just to kind of recap from our regulatory boards, wetlands, ZBA, P&Z, we've had some full agendas over the last few months. Was hoping for that summer slowdown, didn't really happen. We had roughly 12 regulated activity permits with wetlands, a couple notices of violation, and an as of right ruling from the agency. So that was on the commission level. Zoning Board of Appeals has run steady with 7 applications total over the last few months. 6 of those were granted, 1 was denied. Planning and zoning is also seeing a number of applications, mostly modifications of existing site plan approvals. We had 1 special exception permit, which was the elementary school project. We've had 5 coastal site plan applications and 2 824 referrals for our sidewalk project, 1 subdivision application, and no recent map or regulatory amendment requests. So that brings us through August. I guess internally we've transitioned positions from Maria into the land use official position, and our new administrative staff, Michelle Nazario, has been in for several months as well. So that transition is going well, and we're currently seeking our 4th position, advertising and accepting applications for the land use technician. We are working on a large scanning project to eliminate some of our paper files and have better access to digital files online, both for staff and for the public. So we're beginning that this fall. And again, we're updating, as Peggy had mentioned, with the CEDAS process. We're looking to get most all of our commission applications online through Viewpoint Cloud as well. And we're updating our individual web pages for both the land use department and the various commissions. So working with Rita on some of those. That's sort of stemmed from our planning and our plan of conservation and development process. September kicks off the 1-year point in our project. So we've been busy working on that. We've made quite a bit of progress. We do have a really nice functioning web page actually that Rita assisted getting online, and highlights the overall project, who's listening to that, who to contact, opportunities for public input, and current drafts of information, so that is accessible to everyone. We've created a playlist of all of our POCD meetings, so one-stop shopping if anybody is looking to get information on that. It also directly links to the strategic plan page and vice versa, so that while we're running concurrently with both planning projects, people can refer back and forth to each. I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but our approach to this document really kind of splits conversations between the natural and the built environment. And then with both of those elements, we're kind of weaving these coupled themes through to tie the whole document together. And our themes that we're focusing on are vitality and connectivity, resilience and sustainability, and opportunity and growth. And so we plugged those with that mindset, approached the natural environment first, reached out to various stakeholders. We also actively participated in the strategic plan public outreach and used some of that information not to duplicate efforts as well. And so those public comments, we then crafted some draft policies and action items for the natural environment. Then we began the process again for the built environment, contacted those various stakeholders, really kind of invited folks just to attend the meeting and have open dialogue conversations. We had some worksheets, although we didn't get a lot of our worksheets back. Some we received comments just in the form of a letter or a statement from a committee, and then just representatives coming and talking with the commission. I thought that was really productive, actually. And so now at our last meeting last Thursday, we had some draft policies and action items for our built environment, which includes, regulatory changes, infrastructure, things of that nature. So we'll just put some final wordsmithing on that based on the commission's comments, and I'll get that up online this week as well. And as I did with the natural environment, I kind of shared that with our strategic plan consultant too, so she could be aware of where we are. So at this point, we're going to go through both documents. It seems some of the suggestions actually could tie into both natural and built environment. So we're making sure that we're consistent through both sides. We're going to work on some mapping using our existing GIS platform so we can add layers on that in the future. And then we're going to start our implementation table this fall in hopes that we'll wrap the process up and have a good working document for review by the end of the year. Any questions?
Yeah, can you say all that over again?
Oh my gosh.
Wait a minute. Who is that masked Avenger?
Perfect timing, Bruce.
Sorry, I'm late.
So any questions for Erin? That's I know a lot going on in her department. It'll be exciting to see the POCD come out. I think it'll help address, there's just a lot, I think, of anxiety in the public and concern about some of the building projects that have been going on and where things stand. And I think as we work through the POCD and the strategic planning process, it'll, I think, give a better understanding of what the town envisions in this area right now. When I say the town, the community, it's really what the community envisions. So when do you think, though, you guys would actually be voting on your final plan? I'm sorry if you said that earlier.
My goal is by the end of the year, November, December, for the commission to review that. We should have, well, we're September now. Yeah, so we should have a good working draft by then. If by chance we happen to be running a month or two delay, it's not, we just notify OPM that we're in the process and it's expected over the next couple of months. So there isn't, even though the 2013 plan expires in November, we're okay in that sense.
Okay, so it's not like the charter where you have this strict timeline that you have to go through once you start the process?
There, not to complete it, no.
Okay.
Because you can update it anytime, at any time. It's at a minimum every 10 years. So it is a living document that we can update.
Okay. Any other questions for Erin?
I think you mentioned, Erin, that you're going to share maybe back with this board or just post for the public, just some of the key changes that you guys are suggesting too. I think that would be helpful just so that we understand kind of the nature of some of the stuff that's being proposed. And I know sometimes the language and the legalese and the, some of the tenor of the language probably is complicated for the public. And I think, if we can explain it in simple terms of just what the major things are changing, that might be useful.
Oh, well, the plan itself is very easy to read. It's not a zoning regulation amendment where
That's where I
you
was
may
headed.
need a legal degree to interpret this. No, very approachable, very easy to understand, clear, concise, general policies. They'll get into, we have some more specific action items, which I think are really specific responses to the stakeholders coming to us. But they're broader statements,
Okay.
the policies in general. Yeah.
Great. And I think it would be good to, as that maybe in December, have Carol come and talk about, what bubbled out of all this. And then I think the other thing is, I know you guys are working a lot more. One of the comments we hear a lot from the public, I know you hear it a lot, I hear it a lot, is we didn't know about this application, or we didn't know about this was happening. And we're looking at how to improve those communications. I mean, Erin's department does everything that she has to do. It's highly regulated. There's statutory requirements on postings, signs, abutters notices. So there's a lot of regulatory stuff that has to be done. But then there's the next layer, which is just more the general information and general, and it's hard to figure out how to do that and who cares about it. So I think I know when I've had conversations with the chair of planning and zoning, she very much wants to have a more outward communication channel to the public about things going on that is not just regulatory in nature. But I know that she's working with Erin trying to figure out what the best way is to do that, because they go through a lot in their meetings, and to try to figure out who's going to care about some of the decisions that are made is really one of the challenges, I think. So, how do you reach those people that want to know about these things? So we have ways to sign up on the website to get alerts and all these other things. But I think that we're really focusing on how to clean some of that up, and not just with Erin's department, but with a lot of the departments. How do we clean it up, make it more concise and available to people, so that they can decide if they want to attend the hearing, send in a comment to Erin's office, those types of things. So, but that's part of, I know, a lot of discussions that she's having with Carol and as they move forward.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was headed to, guys, was just the decoder ring, right? So anything that we can get out to the public to sort of help demystify some of this stuff for the public is always helpful and probably would alleviate downstream ripple effects for you guys on the commission too.
Right. So we do go above what's required at this point. Currently, we do post all applications and documents online with all agendas, not just the meeting that's current, but we post packets with anything that's in the queue for planning and zoning. And I actively update our agendas to let folks know, just looking at the agenda, if it's going to be heard this evening, if it's tabled, if it's continued, when a public hearing is scheduled, just to try to get as much information on that document as possible. And again, I think that's one thing that we're working towards on our web pages, is to be a little more specific. During COVID, we had some legal notices and things like that posted on the web page. Although they're not required, we may go back and have that information in one-stop shopping. Just also a little more information on what we do, who to approach when you need this, and just to have things at people's fingertips a little bit easier on the web page. We're not currently set up for that. So hopefully we'll have another good update at the end of the year where you can try out the page.
Great.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I guess with that, then, thank you, Erin, for your time. I appreciate all the updates.
Thank you.
We'll move on
And
to
good luck
item
with your
number.
second job too, Erin. Good luck with that.
What's that?
I said, good luck with your second job now too. With Sherry's responsible. Kidding.
I thought that was being a mom, but that must be great.
Good job.
That's the number one job, but it seems to drop to number 10, right? Some of us, we know that. So
They're back to
Um,
school. You're off
No,
the hook.
glad to help with.
oh, now the
Yeah,
sports,
we
the
need
activities ramp up. So
Sure.
okay, well, thank you, Erin.
Thanks.
So I guess we'll move on to item number 17. I'll invite up our Public Works Director. And I don't know if Sam is on as well still, or Town Operations Director, but an update on road paving. So I just wanted to talk, because a couple different things. I mean, I always get people emailing my office, like, when is my road going to get paved? And my road is in terrible shape. It hasn't been paved in 20 years. I need to get my road paved. So I thought it'd be helpful to talk about how we come up with how Public Works develops its road paving schedule. And then I want to talk a little bit about the budget that we have. And once again, we're being impacted significantly in this area by inflation. So we're not able to pave as many roads as one would hope with the money that we had budgeted. So, and I think we have a process that we go through. The department hires a consultant. They look and conducted a study, and they basically look at the quality of the road and they kind of rate it. And I think that one of the things John and I, when we've been talking about this, is that there's other factors that impact the importance of paving a road, not just the condition of the road, but it's also kind of the usage, who uses it. If it's a heavy bicycle pedestrian kind of area, those little gaps in the asphalt make a big difference when you're biking, right? And you have to bike around it, or the pothole fills, or those kinds of things. So we've been talking a little bit about how do we capture that more and have it be systematic. Because what we want to get away from, which might have been a long time ago, like whoever screamed the loudest got their road paved. John has done a great job at trying to make it systematic. So we have a system in place. We follow the science of our road rating schedule, but we feel that maybe that rating system is still not capturing everything in the most appropriate way. That there are some roads that we think should be prioritized more, but if you look at on the rating, it doesn't say that, right? So how do we get around that process, and how do we approach this differently going forward? So John, why don't you walk through, and I know that some board members have seen this a few years ago, but talk a little bit about our road rating system and that.
Okay, I actually have very short presentation, just 5 slides. That'll help me kind of explain the program. If I can, am I able to share? Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, you should be good.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so I just want to kind of give an overview of where we are with the paving program from for the past 10 years, essentially. So that goes from 2014 to 2023. And as Peggy mentioned, we had a road condition survey done by Beta Group in 2013. It was part of a SCROG grant project that all the SCROG towns were able to participate in this survey. And this just kind of shows. So what the survey does is it evaluates the roads and looks at the surface of the road, the condition of the road, essentially. There are several variables in terms of deciding which roads we're going to pave. This is it's definitely the most significant variable here, is just the condition of the road itself. So it varies from 0 to 100. 0 is the worst condition. 100 is the best condition of the pavement. So in 2013, the lowest road surface rating, RSR, was 15, The highest was 99, which is essentially a paved road. After it's paved, it'll get a rating of 99 and change. And the average RSR, it's a weighted average of all roads. It's an indication of how we're doing with the road network. So in 2013, it was, I don't know why I carry that out, but it's essentially 70. I'm rounding these numbers off. And in 2020, we had the roads surveyed again by Beta. We had sort of a limited survey in that we didn't have them redo or resurvey roads that were paved within the past 10 years or so, because we essentially we know what the condition of those roads are. They degrade at a rate fairly linearly. So like, and I don't have the formula in front of me, but essentially starts to lose, the RSR starts to drop by a point or two per year. So to save a little money, we had them do most of the roads, but we held that we did not have them resurvey the relatively newly paved roads. So in 2020, you can see that the lowest RSR went up a little bit to 22. Highest rating is 99, essentially a paved road. And the overall road network RSR was 73 in 2020. So that what this tells me is, you know, the road conditions are improving. It's going in the right direction. Not as quickly as I would like it, but I think it definitely is going in the right direction. But it's still fairly low. And I remember when this was done in 2013. Beta group said, well, Madison that's kind of an average figure, this 70. So it's not terrible. It looks like a C to me. It's 70, you know. I'd like to see the roads in better condition. So let me skip to the next one. So over the past 10 years, the department has paved 84 roads. There's 294 town roads. And that translates to 53 miles of roads paved in the past 10 years out of a total of 130 miles. So this is just a summary of the current 5-year plan. So in this year, you can see number of roads is 11, miles of road is 3.8, and the average RSR is 42. So every year we pave around 4 to 5 miles of road. That's been historically what we've done. The department has done in the past 10 years or so. And you can see by this plan, the current plan, right now we're kind of focusing on the 42s. That's where we are in the program. So most of the roads with a lower RSR have been paved already. And you can see that the RSR road surface rating is going up every year. So we're moving towards, improving or going after roads that are not so severely degraded. So, but granted, in 5 years from now, that 55 will have dropped again. So it's really just chasing the road conditions and trying to keep the whole road network up to, the highest level that we can. And well, before I even get to that, so, as Peggy mentioned, one of the things we want to look at is that this is not the only the variable in terms of deciding which roads we pave. Obviously the road condition is the most important thing, but there are other variables, and essentially these collector roads, the main cut through roads are heavily traveled, and I think they wear more quickly than some of the shorter local roads and the dead end roads and so forth. So, and as Peggy mentioned, we want to look at some of the roads that get heavily used by bicycle and pedestrians probably should have a higher priority, all other things being equal. So I just, I wanted to mention that. And one of the things I'd like to do is redo or essentially resurvey the town, all of the roads. And the technology is improved where it's automated, and there are vehicles that go out and scan the road. And I think that'll give us sort of a more accurate ranking of all the roads. These are all done by hand, both in 2013 and in 2020. It's a driver that goes out, with pencil and paper and rates the roads, which can be difficult because the road condition looks different in different lighting, and whether the road is bone dry or damp. So there's a little bit of human error there, I think. So we want to look into having the roads resurveyed and having it done, automatically scanned. I think will be more consistent. And so you look at the list that we have, the report that we have that Beta had done has been a very good tool for us for making decisions on the roads, but it's getting somewhat outdated, and some of the roads are suspect. And you look at the ratings, and I do in certain instances kind of scratch my head like, well, geez, this road looks like it should be higher than this one over here. But it's the best tool that we have, and it has served us pretty well. So I just then going to, I think this is the last slide.
Honey, just a question on what you were just saying though. Do you tend to deal with, I know this always comes up, so I guess I'm leading the witness here, but relative to private roads or private associations, you get those requests too, right? Where they're not really town roads and we don't necessarily maintain those roads as opposed to true town roads. What we're looking at here is town roads, correct?
Yes, that's correct. These are town roads only. The survey only includes town roads. And you're correct, we don't maintain private roads. So I get calls and,
As do I.
on occasion about that. Why, I'm a taxpayer, why is my road not being paved? And I have to explain, well, it's not a town road, and it does, they typically don't meet town road standards. But that's a whole other question, I guess. So,
John, is there a best practice on what the town-wide average should be?
I don't know what it should be, actually. I don't know that number. All I really, as I recall, talking to the consultant, saying that 70 is sort of an average that has seen in Connecticut. They do other towns in Connecticut, but what that should be, I'd like to see 99s, but I know that's not realistic. It seems to me it's fairly low. What we have, the 70 could be improved upon, which brings me sort of to my the next slide. Paving has been hit by inflation. You can see here, this is the past 5 years. This is from the state bid. Paving prices per ton, essentially a ton of asphalt in 2019 was $74 per ton. And this year, when bids came out in the spring, you see it really went up quite a bit. So that we're paying $100 per ton, which is, we're buying off the state bid, so we're getting a good deal, as I understand. And in speaking with contractors, have told me, yeah, we could never get that price, but it's still, you can see it's going up. And then I just put the percentage increase that asphalt's gone up over the.
Wow, that's crazy. 14.9%. Wow.
Yeah. And that's tons of pavement. There are other incidentals. Milling, tack coat, basically the oil that goes down between the layers of asphalt. The prep work, catch basin tops that we replace before the road gets paved and things like that. But that's a really good, that's the most significant indicator of rising costs on road paving. So that's that's all I have. I just want to kind of give an overview of where we're at.
John, I'm sure you get a lot of phone calls from the public with an essential question of when are you going to pave my road? How do you respond to them?
Yes, well, I'll tell you one thing, this
I get them
report
too.
is very helpful. Because I can say, yes, I understand your road is in poor condition. And, but just be aware, you just realize that there are other roads that are in worse condition. And, you know, I can provide the data here. That's basically my response. That we're trying to be as aggressive as we can. The town is in paving, you know, as much as we possibly can, within the, you know, the funding limits that we have.
Yeah,
And then, you know,
Jeff-
and I tell them that we patch, and in some cases where roads are severely worn and they're, you know, they may not be on the paving list for another year or two, we'll go in and sort of spot pave. And our highway department has done that, where we strip out or cut out actual, you know, large areas that are really in bad, sort of a washboard surface, and pave those areas to buy us a little bit more time. And that's kind of been that's been my answer to the public when I get questions like that.
So John, though, I know we've talked about, if you go back to that rating slide, the cost to improve these roads goes up significantly the lower the rating, because there's different levels, right? There's 2 or 3 different levels of the road. So, you know, you want to catch the road before it gets to having to be entirely rebuilt, right?
Yes, exactly. This is really oversimplified presentation here, but we don't want them to fall into the really low RSR ratings, because then we have to reclaim the road, because if you mill it, it'll just it won't hold up and it'll completely fall apart. So it's not a good candidate to mill. And it's almost double the cost to reclaim a road as it is to mill and overlay.
And I think that's why sometimes people say, why are you paving this cul-de-sac up in, you know, wherever that has 2 houses on it, versus this other main road further down that has more traffic? Well, if we don't do that, that road could be literally fall apart, right? And then the cost would triple to have to, I don't know, triple, but, you know, to get the road functioning again. So he has to always catch those roads before they go to that next level, I guess, so to speak, of repair required. What's
Yeah, so
rating with that?
that's a good point. That's harder to explain, but to the public, but that's exactly it. Some roads, and this is one thing that I've heard at various seminars that I've been to, is don't have a worst first approach where all you do is pave your worst roads and sort of, you know, neglect all other factors. And you know, let's say you'll bankrupt your agency if you try to do that. So, but essentially we are paving the worst roads overall, but there are some other factors that we take into account. And if it's a short dead end road with a low RSR, I know that it's not seeing a lot of heavy traffic or as much truck traffic necessarily. And I have that knowledge of what, you know, what the highway department is doing in terms of maintenance. And I have that sort of that inside knowledge about what roads I think can wait, and wait another couple of years. And in some cases we'll have to sort of jump that road and go to another road that's more heavily traveled, that I know is wearing more quickly and that it's requiring more attention from the highway department. So it's not necessarily in order of the lowest to the highest, but as you can see from the list, overall, it's creeping up to where we're going after roads that are in better condition as the years go on through the 5-year plan.
John, is you alluded to this a second ago. Is the miles of road that you repair every year a budget constraint or a contractor equipment constraint?
It's It's primarily, I would say, budget. If we spent more, we could manage it. Though I'll say that we are very busy and it is difficult to manage. So if we have, there's a lot of planning and preparation that goes on into paving, but certainly if we increase the budget, we would make it work. We would, manage it. So I would say it's more so budget.
And we've talked about, and we're looking at this now. If you recall, Bruce, a couple of years ago, we did do an infusion into the paving account because we got kind of behind again, caught with that jump. I think it was 2 years ago with the pricing, and so we want to kind of keep consistent in terms of the mile. You can look at this list and it's, in the 4 range of miles of roads. So we did an appropriation into that account. And we might want to consider that again. I think he wants to update the study, right? Using the new technology because we think we need it. And then come back with by the end of this year, I think maybe a recommendation of getting us caught up again, like we did a couple of years ago.
So I think that's a great idea. I think renewing the study is probably appropriate, and with the new technology, that's great. But I would love to see, modeling that says, we want to get from where we are to an RSR average of X, whatever you think the right number is. And in order to do that in the next 5 or 10 years, or whatever the reasonable time horizon is, this is how many miles of road we need to pave. This is what we estimate the annual expense to be. And it begins to set guidance for us and guidance for the CIP on what the appropriate year-over-year funding is. I remember from being on CIP, we fretted quite a bit about how much money did we put into the fund. If we had a target at the time of 80% and 10 miles, right? I think it would have made those conversations a lot easier. And I think it also goes a long way to letting the residents know that we have a plan. And here's how long the plan is going to take, and here's how long the plan is going to cost.
Yeah,
No,
I think the
that's
study
a great approach.
should include a modeling component like that. And it'll just be theoretical, which is better than nothing. It'll be something to target. And and then it needs to be revisited every several years. How is it performing in terms
Like
of
every year, because you got I think you've got the inflation, right? Inflation, how do you model something that went from 2% to 14.9%? So, I mean, it's a bit of an X factor.
Yeah. And then you've got a weighting factor for the usage of the road and a weighting factor for the RSR. I think if you could, sort of explain that, or even show us the formula for that, it would help us understand. It would help residents understand as well. So it's RSR times, 0.7 plus a usage factor times 0.3. You add those together and you get the ranking.
Yeah,
whatever.
We started looking at that, and let me create a formula that does that. So analyzing all the roads that have been done in the past and try to come up with a formula that incorporates that. We just due to the workload and all, we didn't really get to that point where we have a formula for it. So it's more or less looking at the list that we have based on condition and making some sort of educated decisions on, do we need to skip over a road and go to a more heavily traveled road? So it's not as, and I don't really know any town that has this. Maybe there is a set formula that you can create to model your town. I guess that's something that's a question for the consultant that we speak with, and whoever's going to do the scan. how do we, give us a sort of a formula or
Well,
a,
and I think we need to account for bicycle and pedestrian traffic. And looking at it from in my view, risk factor. So they might be looking at but a road that has a lot of potholes or obstructions that have to be navigated by bikers. I think we have to, include that into the factor somehow. We have a bicycle and pedestrian study that, they're going to be completing for the whole town. And that's going to be prioritizing areas that are heavily used. So maybe we have some sort of weighting as well. And I know that's one of the complaints about down south of Route 1, that, they have extensive use of those roads with walkers, bikers. We host triathlons down there. We have road races. And yet there's lots of patchwork. There's lots of minefield, so to speak, as somebody who does bike a lot. Love your visitor, Scott. So that's another conversation that John and I talked about. How do we, because we don't want to just say, oh, well, everybody walks on Middle Beach, therefore that should get paved. We want to have a thoughtful process for all the roads in town where there is heavy bike and pedestrian usage. Scotland is one of them as well, that, we now have this improvement plan that we went for a grant. So factoring that in somehow to this weighting system, I think will be important.
No, I think that's fine. I think it's all of the appropriate factors that need to be considered when ranking the order of repairs is fine. And I think that's a valid inclusion. It's more about structuring that so that it's repeatable and defendable.
Yep, I agree.
And my street should be first.
Yeah.
First.
I had one more question for John. John, the Swarpus COPS project that we learned about earlier this morning, what's that about?
so it's a LOTSIP project, as Peggy mentioned. That road was selected because it was the remaining road that's a collector road that was not paved, and it's in very, so it's in very poor condition. And that road is basically a road reconstruction project, sort of like a reclamation, but even more, where the engineer is going to look at drainage and look at things like the shoulders. There are areas where Warpus Road necks down. I think you're probably aware of this, Al, where there are large trees right on the edge of the road. We want them to look at that and make recommendations for possibly removing trees if necessary, that are a hazard. And there's also a pedestrian component where we'd be looking at possibly extending the sidewalk from Green Hill Road, from the school zone area, up. This is Cops Warpus, so up Cops Road to the trailhead area where it intersects with Warpus Road. So it's pavement, it's drainage, it's looking at improvements along the shoulders, and incorporating a pedestrian component. And also looking at the intersection. You may be aware that's been, over the years, there have been concerns about the intersection of Cops Road and Green Hill Road, where the public has, or the motorists have suggested we need a traffic light there, all kinds of things, because what happens in the morning at the commute in the morning with the schools, that intersection sort of breaks down and starts behaving like an always stop condition. And it's not, it's just a stop condition at the side roads, and Green Hill is a through condition there. So that's one thing that we want the consultant to analyze as well as part of this project.
Okay, so
Thank
to
you.
be continued, I think we will be hearing more about this as he's going to get the study going pretty quickly, and then come back and talk a little bit more about this and as part of the budget cycle too. So if we don't infuse money in, we might beef up the budget. We can have those conversations at the end of this year, early next year about funding. John, for next spring, you need to basically know where you are on that budget by like March timeframe, correct? Because that's when you start putting the spring paving list together.
Yes, that's right. And the other important thing there is we need to know which roads we're going to be paving, because there's prep work that the town forces do. So
Yep.
we
Okay.
need to know fairly early on.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you for that. And I think you're here for the next one as well, right? The next two?
Yes.
So I'll move on if the board is good with that. Item number 18, discuss and take action to award a contract between the town of Madison and Westcott and Mapes for engineering services for the fire protection water tank installation project at 165 Bartlett Drive, and to authorize the first selectwoman to sign all necessary contracts and documents as budgeted fiscal year 23-24 CIP. Right? All right. So this has been an ongoing thing in CIP to put these water tanks so that if there's a fire, we don't have public water in a lot of parts of our town, that the fire department has a way to access this. And it's been a challenge because it's quite a substantial thing that gets buried in somebody's yard. So we're very grateful that a resident has been willing to accept one of these. John, anything you want to add to this, John?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. The most difficult thing is finding a site for these tanks, and the chief of the North Madison Fire Department, Chief Penders, was able to find a site and find somebody that was interested in allowing the tank to go on private property, and essentially deed the area over to the town for maintenance of the tank. So this is the first step. Well, there's been many steps before we got here, but this is to hire somebody to survey the property, do a design of the tank, and prepare the easement documents. It's a fairly, in terms of engineering, it's not that complicated, but it'll help us move this thing along. I'm hoping that we can make a decision on this. We'll give them the notice to proceed and have a design and have something ready to go to bid fairly shortly, hopefully.
Any further questions? No? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. And thank you again to the resident, who I think is also a member of Nomad, if I'm correct, who was willing to have one of these installed in their property. It's a great public service. So, and I think there are a few other locations. If there's somebody out there in the public watching this, and you have a lot of excess land on your property, and it might be a good location, please reach out to the Public Works Department about where we're looking for more of these to be installed. I'm going to move on.
So with that, we're trying to get these tanks certified by ISO, with the insurance ratings for the town, so that they could actually be, the insurance companies could use those as a certified source of water for the fire insurance. So hopefully it'll lower rates in the neighborhood. So that's one thing we're trying to work on. I know that we tried it a few years ago, and they were looking for a lot of construction documents and stuff that we didn't have at the time. So now that we have this one tank going in, we're going to use these documents as well. Hopefully we can get all the others, the tanks that are already installed, certified as well. So it'll help the people in the neighborhoods where these tanks are, hopefully lower their insurance costs.
Right. I think most people probably have no idea, to be honest, Sam, about these tanks and how the fire departments manage these things. So maybe at one point we'll try to do some public awareness campaign, about this, so people can understand how important they are, and that they'll benefit getting a reduction in their insurance if they are installed. So, wait, did we vote? All in favor? We did vote, right? Yes. Okay, so moving on, item number 19, I'm actually going to amend this motion because we have a specific contractor. John had added the information. So item number 19, I would like to amend item number 19 to read, discuss and take action to award a contract between the town of Madison and ABC LERS LLC for the 2023 curb replacement project in the amount of $7 per linear foot, and to authorize the first selectwoman to sign all necessary contracts and documents as budgeted in fiscal year 23-24.
Moved.
Second, okay, Bruce, yep. Okay, great. So this is just, John, I know you've been working a lot on this. You want to just spend a second and then we can vote.
So, yeah, so this is something we typically do every year, hire a company to go in and do townwide curb repairs, curb that gets knocked out and damaged during the winter season primarily. And AB Sealers is, they've been the low bidder actually for the last few times that we bid this project. It's sort of a niche for them. I think they're good at it. And so you can see their price is quite a bit lower than the next low bid.
Is this higher than previous years? Just curious.
It is by like $1, as I recall. It was, I think,
Okay.
$6 or $6.50 maybe.
Okay, so we're seeing increases in this as well. Any other questions? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So motion passes. Item number 7 is discuss and take action to approve the revised 2023 meeting schedule. Okay. All right, great, Scott, and then Al. Basically, we looked at the calendar quickly and realized, I think we had, we were scheduled to have our meeting on election day, which didn't make sense. And somehow it got put the Monday before an 8 a.m. meeting. And I think in talking to Jacqueline, it just didn't seem to make sense to have a day, a Board of Selectmen meeting that Monday morning. So we just thought, let's do our Tuesday schedule, but just push it out a week. Also, because the charter now, the transition to the new board would be happening after Thanksgiving. So this allows a meeting that I would argue could be a good housekeeping meeting for whoever is sitting on the Board of Selectmen. We can do that without our heads cleared and do that on the 14th and just take care of a lot of housekeeping items. And then we would have our new board, whoever's sworn in and voted in on November 27th would be the first one. And that would be the evening meeting. And I know in the past it was kind of awkward because we'd had a morning meeting and people wanted to have family come. So it's we're in a good schedule, I think, to do it this way. So unless anybody objects to the changing of that one meeting, I guess all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, great. Thank you. And then item number 21, discuss and take action to approve selected revisions to the town personnel policies.
Moved.
Okay. And I think if we want to have Deb come up, she can just spend a section. This is the second in a series of sections that the HR department has been going through to clean up language and just modernize some of the language in there, update it. She's been consulting with Labor Council on some things as well. So you got a markup of this in your packet. Any questions on any of the changes in there that you want to discuss? No? Okay. I guess then with that.
I'm sorry. I forgot to unmute myself. There was one thing with the calendar. Let me go back to where I found it. Just that, for the holidays, did that get updated? So the number was updated to 14, but the word still says 13. So where it says in 9.10 holidays, regular, full-time and part-time employees shall be granted the following 13 holidays. I believe it's 14, isn't it?
Good catch. So we can make that change.
And then we actually just, we had done this in the Board of Ed for the calendar policy there. I don't know if it would make sense here or not. But for the Board of Ed, we had just updated it to say, in terms of the school holidays and vacation, we said observe in accordance with applicable law, all legally required state and federal holidays, with the addition of, I think it was, we added in a few that aren't on the list because they're at the discretion of the governor, like Good Friday and Thanksgiving Day. So I don't know if it makes sense to do that, so we don't have to update things if there are changes.
I think it's a good point, because I'm almost thinking we vote on this every year anyway, as a board. We vote on the holiday schedule. So I'm wondering if we just don't even have it in here, right? And then we just, as approved by the Board of Selectmen, is Deborah, is there any reason we would need to actually have it in the personnel?
Well, I would leave it in there because when we are hiring, people are referred to the personnel manual if they have any questions. So when it's listed in there, they have an idea of what the benefits would be. So the holiday, the vacation, the personal, things like that. So I think it's important because then they have all that information instead of going and looking at a Board of Selectmen meeting to see what the actual days are. If you decide not to do it that way, we certainly can give them the list of the holidays when we're in the hiring, function of trying to offer somebody a job.
Well, would you be updating every year then, this list? Because it's an online guide, right? Because I know this was kind of static for a long time, right? We weren't regularly updating it.
Yeah, the holiday list is the same every year. When the Board of Selectmen approve the actual day, like in the case of this year, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, it's over the weekend, so we do observed. So that's when the Board of Selectmen approved the actual real day. In the personnel manual, it just says that employees are entitled to Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. The actual day is what's in question every year, especially if it falls on the weekend. We do not give specific dates in the personnel manual. We just give the holiday itself.
Okay. Because I think that the Board of Ed, are they required, Jen, to offer certain holidays? Because it's always, our holidays are totally at the discretion, right, of the town.
Right. And that's why the Board of Ed had changed it to be consistent with what state statute was.
Right. Okay.
And the Board of Ed is a little bit different because there are certain holidays where they're not required to give them, such as Veterans Day, where if you're not going to close on that day, you are required to do observance activities. So that's where it is a little bit different. But the Board of Ed had elected to change the verbiage a little bit just because as we added in Juneteenth as a holiday, then what it was doing was preventing us from having to go back anytime a new holiday was added in to make another vote on it, where we were saying, as long as we're consistent with the state holiday calendar, then we didn't need to vote anytime a new holiday were to be added.
So I'm just wondering.
Are we required, though, to be that closely aligned to state statutes from a town standpoint? I get the Board of Ed piece.
That's
The Board
the
is,
discretion of the town. I mean, we haven't had a new holiday in 10 years. They acknowledged Martin Luther King Day as a holiday, and then the next one was Juneteenth. So I don't think that this happens very often. to have a Board of Selectmen approval to add a holiday to the holiday list. And like the Board of Ed, they celebrate the Jewish holidays and things like that. So their holiday listing is different than the town's holiday listing.
Okay,
Yeah, and we can always just, part of Deb's job will be to, if this needs to get amended for whatever reason, as we did last year with Juneteenth, we would be coming back, and I think we could vote on this piece within the personnel policy. If something came up that we had to change it. So I guess I wasn't thinking about it, that what we're voting on as a board then is more the dates, right?
okay.
Yeah, and so that's what we do every year of when we're going to recognize the holidays, sounds like. So so you're okay just leaving it as is then, Jen, and then she'll just be monitoring that and would bring it back to us if we had to change it.
Right, yep, that's fine. Like
Okay.
I said, I would just make sure that we write out the word 14 instead of 13.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? No? All right, with that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. All right, thank you very much for that. And we'll continue to kind of chip away at it. And thank you for your work on that.
Thank you.
So I think with that, then we can move on to citizens' comments. Anybody have a hand raised?
No hands are raised.
No?
I have
Go on.
one I realized I forgot to mention earlier, which is probably worth just a quick shout out. Sunny Scarpa, our librarian at the Scranton Memorial Library, her last day is the 15th of this week. She's leaving to go to the Wallingford Public Library, and so I know they're underway with looking for a new head librarian, but wanted to thank her for her service. She's been amazing to collaborate with, and we will miss her tremendously. So
Great, thank you. Yeah, and she has been a wonderful leader for the library. I think we did talk about it at our last board meeting, which I know, Scott, you had difficulty joining remotely, but she's been a great leader. So, but hopefully we'll find somebody just as good. So, any citizen comments, last going, no hands raised?
No.
Okay, with that, then I guess I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Okay, all in favor, meeting adjourned. Yes, thank you very